Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit ServiceNow.com.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. This is Elaine Lowe of the Series Business Newsletter here at the Ankler, filling in for our usual pod host Sean McNulty on this Thursday, September 26th. Joining me today from Los Angeles is the Ankler himself, Richard Rushfield, as well as our executive editor, David Litsky, dialing in from New York. David, it is technically fall in New York now. Does it make you want to buy school supplies or a bouquet of freshly sharpened pencils, to paraphrase one of my favorite movies?
New York is nice in September because it definitely, in the mornings and evenings, you really feel it. So I do recommend it.
Yeah. It always makes me think of my favorite quote from You've Got Mail when she's like, it makes me want to buy school supplies, a bouquet of freshly sharpened pencils.
That says something about the wild rebel in you, that your imagination runs to school supplies and sharpened pencils.
I am a wild child. Richard, It kind of feels like fall out here in LA, right? Now that horrible heat wave where it was 110 degrees has passed us by.
Yeah, it was cloudy yesterday.
That's new.
It was crazy.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, a cloudy week for the industry here as well, with two major companies engaging in layoffs, starting with Paramount and then Disney, each reportedly cutting hundreds of employees this week. Disney's cuts impacted around 300 in the U.S., with the trades reporting that legal, finance, HR, and comms were hit the hardest. And Paramount saying that its planned reductions are now, quote, 90% complete, with its office of the CEO issuing a memo that they're looking to, quote, accelerate streaming profitability while at the same time adjusting to the evolving landscape in our traditional business. Now, unfortunately, this isn't different from this kind of the steady drumbeat we've seen of layoffs for the last year or two, is it, Richard?
No, and it's in all likelihood going to continue. Paramount claimed they were 90% of the way towards fulfilling their goals that they promised, but there's a bunch of streaming services and companies associated with them that the marketplace has decided can't survive on their own. I don't know whether they're right or wrong. So the pain and cuts will continue until they're no more.
I went on LinkedIn, and I know I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance, but I did.
You guys are revealing all your, it's like some
school
kind
supplies,
of
LinkedIn.
rave here.
And so it was interesting to look and see responses.
Apologies to our young listeners, by the way. Are hearing this
Hey,
stuff.
everybody's on LinkedIn. A billion people are on LinkedIn. I'm not going to apologize for going there. But yes, to your point, one particularly salient comment that I saw was that the Paramount layoffs, not massive, but but endless, right? That's I think a key factor. And then the other thing that really struck me was that I looked for Disney layoffs too, and I didn't really see a whole lot of response, but the Paramount response was pretty remarkable. I mean, sitting in a company that you think like, it's this sort of paragon of this sort of warm, supportive culture, because we're basing it on the leadership, right? So yeah, I mean, people were really, there was an amazing outpouring of sympathy and support, and people talking about like, hey, this, these, all these people who came over from Pluto and were these, sort of really, pioneering, streaming people and who worked to build this, and now, they're gone, and the teams that created these, A+ campaigns for Yellowstone and Top Gun Maverick, and now they're gone, and it was affecting to actually see it, I have to admit.
Yeah, it's been rough, and yeah, I don't think I've seen as many announcements from the Disney side, at least not personally on LinkedIn yet, although I'm sure those are going to trickle in over the next few days. But I mean, we're talking about hundreds, on the back of thousands from last year. On the Disney side, there were already, 7,000 layoffs last year, and then a couple more rounds at Pixar and Disney Entertainment TV in between that. And at Paramount, it's just been this endless trickle. And can you imagine what that must do for morale? Even knowing that 90% is complete, that's still probably, I mean, given that they're looking at a 15% reduction, we're still looking at least a few more hundred after this, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, there's still plenty. I mean, they still exist as services and ultimately are going to be folded into other things. So, they're getting close to skeleton crew levels here, but a ways to go still.
Well, now that we've talked about layoffs, let's look at another spot of friction for the industry. It is the 1-year anniversary of the official end of the Writers Guild of America strike. So there have been a lot of parts of that contract that some writers are already seeing benefits from. Of course, it's also been a really tough year for writers. A lot of folks I talk to are still out of work, still sort of feeling in limbo. But yeah, for those of you who listen to this pod on the day it comes out, September 27th marks exactly 1 year since the contract was cemented. And I remember being at Idle Hour, which is this big barrel-shaped bar out in North Hollywood last year, the night it was announced in like the 23rd or 24th, and people were really celebratory then. So, I checked in with some folks a year later. And for the most part, the writers I talk to mostly still say, yeah, the strike was worth it, although things are feeling pretty grim. I mean, Richard, you talk to a lot of writers. What have you heard?
I mean, I think it's just the rhetoric of the strike during the strike and after it was mismatched to the reality of the occasion. And it fostered this idea that a new Writers Guild contract could fix Hollywood and make everything okay. And then they'd be protected and all be fine. And that's not within the purview of a Writers Guild contract. Those contracts speaks to shows that exist and can't touch shows that don't exist or you'd like to exist. And it was all happening within the context of an industry that was entering a dramatic pullback. I think that pullback would have happened whether the strike came or not, but the end of the strike was sort of the starting gun for this to happen. I don't think the strike's to blame for it, but there's not much to point to for writers. They got the improvements from the strike, but we have sort of depression level unemployment right now, so that's not a great time. And there's nothing that the strike could do to do that. You also, when you have a strike, you have the cost of a strike that has to be sort of earned back for all sides. So that's a factor too. Yeah,
the point of the strike is the disruption after all, but we are definitely still feeling the impact of that disruption a year later. And, I was asking folks what kind of immediate benefits they have seen. I was talking to one executive story editor who says that when the show that she was on before the strike, when she was called back after and was able to go back in, her paycheck was like 5 to 10% more immediately because of the increased wages from the deal, which includes like better foreign streaming residuals and guaranteed 2-step deal for writers and script fees for episodes from staff writers, which WGA President Meredith Steam told me last week that, is huge for them because that's a first-time thing. And that's when you're really just starting out in your career. There have also been some viewership-based streaming residual bonuses, which was one thing that was promised in the new contract. And we now know that 2 Netflix series have qualified for that, which is, that's something. And they'll expect to see more of those gains roll in. But, we're still very slowly sort of seeing some of these other parts of the contract make their way through to the day-to-day for these writers, a lot of whom aren't in rooms that are impacted by the new bargaining agreement.
So, these improvements are real and they were needed. People should get an increase in their contract and everything, and I don't begrudge any of them. It's just, you're looking at the larger context. It's like, okay, so they're doing a little better here, a little better there in the face of a 40% pullback or a 60% pullback. Like that's...
Yeah, we don't know. 600 scripted series on the air during peak TV. I talked to some people on the studio side who are like, what's that new number now? 400, 300? That's a huge cut. That's 50%.
Yeah. I guess the question I have looking back on it, because the contract that they ultimately came to, I think is reasonable and all. And test of that is once they sat down and started talking to each other, they agreed to it pretty quickly. And it seemed pretty common sense. Is why did it take 5.5 months to get to that point? And I think there's blame on both sides for that, frankly, if we look back. And I'd love to start pointing some fingers there at some point.
Oh, would you like to start pointing fingers today, Richard?
I mean, everyone who was involved in the leadership of both sides that should just be given like 3 years in the penalty box or something. That was not a well-handled episode in Hollywood history on either side.
I was curious about the folks who maybe thought the strike wasn't worth it, which are nobody who would speak to me on the record, of course. But I did speak to one high-level TV agent, and I spoke to a couple of them who weren't, I think, thrilled with the way the business is now, still in the wake of everything. But one agent said that he's heard a lot of frustration from his clients because of the mini rooms, which the Guild fought to extinguish, basically, with the new contract. They're non-existent, or because of the premiums attached to these development rooms now, they're just too expensive. And so, in his view, that's preventing more work from happening right now. And I did talk to one longtime showrunner who very bluntly said, no, it wasn't worth it. We had historic leverage thanks to the actor strike as well that was happening concurrently, but we used that leverage, quote, to gain things that were important to leadership, but not necessarily beneficial to membership in the long run, things like mini rooms. And so there's this kind of feeling simmering of like, was this the hill to die on with some of the parts of the contract that were actually gained?
I mean, I was never a fan of the mini room demand in there. And I saw the importance of it because they were using it to go around, the studios were using it to go around the development process. But I mean, just in the end, like when you're looking on things of importance, it's like, it's in a picture of an industry in massive pullback. And you're not going to get them to spend more money in massive pullback. So if you tell them, you can't spend on that, they're like, okay, we can't spend on that. So money saved. And I think that's where everything ends up here.
Yeah, speaking of that, one other concern I heard was, okay, these new room minimums where you have to have like minimum 3 writers in a series of 6 or fewer episodes, or I think it's 5 or 6 writers in a series that's 13 or more episodes. It's like, to what extent are we going to see studios try to make those minimums the new maximums and just sort of cap out at what those contractual minimums are? So, I mean, with just the general air of austerity around, I think that's been a salient concern.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Elaine and Richard, I mean, how much did you, either you or obviously your sources and actively covering this a year ago plus, yeah, how much did you sort of see some of these pain points coming from back then that, oh, this will get exploited by the studios this way, or, oh, this will never happen because there won't be the jobs or whatever. I mean, and if you felt that, why didn't everyone else necessarily see all that coming too?
I think that's a perennial concern when you're looking at how is the man, so to speak, going to try and still undercut this contract when it's done? Or like, how far are they going to try and push it? I mean, that's probably a concern with every labor contract that's inked. You know, you push for the gains that you can get, and then you sort of wait for the pushback in return as they try to save money or do whatever their priorities are.
So do you, in your reporting, did you already get a sense of agenda items being formed for the next negotiation?
That's a good question. I mean, you know, AI was just such a big thing on the picket lines last year. And when I checked in with WGA President Meredith Steam for the latest series business newsletter we ran, she said that there are confidential meetings that have happened. Because I think part of the contract is they're supposed to be able to check in with the studios and sort of,
They agreed to discuss.
Yes, exactly. They agreed to at least meet to chat about it, but with no kind of further stipulations, right? And so apparently they have started meeting, but because the contents of those meetings are confidential, I wasn't privy to what they actually have talked about. Although, you know, even though AI was an enormous concern for them last year, it kind of still remains to be seen how this dance is going to play out between the creative side and the studio side, right? Like, it definitely hasn't stopped the steady trickle of news that AI is slowly being incorporated into mainstream operations. I mean, look at last week. Lionsgate said it had inked a deal with Runway, this generative AI company. This week, there's a report out from Variety that says Runway is offering grants of, I think, up to $1 million to filmmakers working on AI-powered projects. There's got to be a happy coexistence somewhere.
I mean, what does an AI-powered project mean? Like,
well, I'm happy to walk you through that if you really want to hear it. But we did cover this a little bit in the Real AI piece this week, looking at sort of where OpenAI's much ballyhooed the video generative AI tool called Sora is, because we get demos and, it's not available, but Runway is available. So basically it takes about 300 generations to get a usable 5-second clip. Okay. So 5 seconds. All right. So I apologize for the math here. We're just going to go through this. We're going to keep it real simple. So that's 3,600 attempts to get a 1-minute clip. So, in a full-length movie, let's just pretend that someone's going to try to make a full-length movie. And let's, again, to keep it easy, 100 minutes, right? So that's 360,000 prompts of the AI to get the material. And then, of course, is all that going to match? What, as we've seen, if you've played with any of these tools, you try something twice, you get 2 responses. They got a nice headline out of it. If you read it closely, a lot of those the grants start at $5,000, and it's up to $1 million. I'd be surprised if anybody gets $1 million, especially given that.
What are you going to do with $5,000 on an AI? Well, is that to fund the use of AI, or is that just...
Yeah, it's not really clear. I think they just give you the money, but because I imagine, again, you're going to have to do a fair amount of cleanup on this stuff. But yeah, it's not going to get you very far. And Runway, if we pretend that they're giving away $1 million to 100 people to make short films or even a feature-length film, well, they don't really have that kind of money. I looked it up to date. They've raised a little less than $250 million. Now, I know that's not a lot of money to you, Richard. So, okay. But to me, it's a lot of money. And if you're running an AI company, it's an extreme a lot of money, because it's literally just a cash incinerator to run an AI company. So they're not giving away $100 million. It's ludicrous. They're going to give away, $500,000. But, that's... what I think. Just the math doesn't work. Plus, whatever. I hope everyone in California is willing to go without electricity while one of these movies is made. With the 360,000 prompts to try to get it to happen.
Yeah, I still say the best way to deflate the AI bubble would say we will give every studio a waiver to go for it, make a total AI film. Just AI script, total AI script, AI actors, everything. Do it, put it out, and let's check back and see how that worked out for you. I think that
Richard,
will.
I think this is your chance to. I know you've got that weird John Wick spec script, in your drawer there. This is your chance. You can make it with AI using, because it'll be trained on all that Lionsgate catalog. So you'll be.
What would happen if you gave creatives their ultimate nightmare scenario like that? Of just let's have everything purely AI.
What would happen is they would put out a lot of terrible movies that would bomb. But would it be like 1,000 monkeys and 1,000 typewriters, and eventually you might find something good among all that? You have to have a lot of monkeys making a lot of movies. I haven't seen, a clip of an AI generated anything yet that looks like anything more than a screensaver to me. And I've read all sorts of things, and it. Who knows where it'll get someday. Right now, it's at a 7th grade level, so. You want to go?
Is it though? I've seen some of these demos in action, and at least from the snippets, in terms of hey, let's make this actress look 10% happier in this shot.
Yeah,
those tweaks seem feasible.
Listen, using computers to enhance digital effects, that's not, that
new.
When was T2? When that
30 years ago at least, right?
That goes back quite a ways. But in terms of fully AI creating the basic things like performance and an actor's performance and the story that a writer writes, I just say you think you want to replace that? Go for it, give it a shot. See, and when you've got to explain how you had a whole season, that you had a whole year of flops because you thought a computer could help you save a little money on screenwriters. We'll bring our scripts into your replacement.
The secret is that it's not really clear where the savings will come when people have to pay the real price that it costs to run the AI. Right now, that is being largely subsidized by, 4 companies. And, when that cost is passed on to the user because they can't sustain that anymore, people are going to be like, maybe humans aren't so bad. Because, it is prohibitively expensive to power these things, and I think that is sort of largely obscured in this conversation.
And you know what doesn't cost that much in the grand scheme of things? Hiring a writer to do a draft on a script ends up being one of the smaller line items on any film's budget. So,
they're probably not going to cause a blackout in any small city from the electricity required to power this writer.
That too.
So, there's some weird stuff out there. You can sort of want to, appreciate it as sort of its own thing. But it's very hard at the moment to sort of envision performance, as you said, Richard.
David, when you mentioned cost savings, it made me think a couple days ago, I went to go speak to a media class at USC. And I was getting questions about, state of the industry, that kind of thing. And one student asked me, okay, if AI is able to save these studios money, do you think that they'll then use those savings and put it back into, I want to say they were looking at basically like DEI initiatives and other sort of areas that had been cut, which was so lovely and idealistic.
Studios are obsessed with finding ways to make the lives of writers better. And, they're just like, they're applying for grants all over.
The AI will create the equitable Shangri-La we've all been waiting for. Yeah, that's adorable, frankly, but okay.
I think I had said, like a lot of these corporations have different priorities, and I think I would be hard-pressed to see that that's directly where the savings would be going into, but it's a nice thought.
Right. Have you heard about stock buybacks? Do you know what those are?
I was like, a lot of it goes back to the shareholders.
When they get finished firing half the workforce, they might come around to looking at ways to make life better for those who remain. So,
well, on that note, everybody should definitely read Eric Barmack's analysis of OpenAI Sora when you get a chance. Elsewhere on The Ankler, we've got Katie Rich with a great interview on the Prestige Junkie podcast with Will Ferrell and Harper Steele about their new road trip documentary. And Entertainment Strategy Guy has a deep dive into the performance records of each of the Walt Disney Company's likely internal candidates to fill Bob Iger's very large shoes as CEO of the House of Mouse. Now, coming up, let's talk about John Malone and David Zaslav. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Eric Barmack, and I'm a working producer, and I write the Real AI newsletter for The Ankler. Real AI is your destination to understand the truth about AI and entertainment, who's using it, how they're using it, and the technological change already here in the industry. I care about AI because it's changed the way I run my own business and even pitch and sell shows. I've used AI for script coverage, to help my team brainstorm concepts, and even to come up with pitch decks. Real AI will also tell you more about the fast-moving technology the studios and streamers are tracking and how that will impact your job, both today and tomorrow. I believe being informed is the only way to face the new frontier right here at our doorstep, which I believe can help foster the best in our human creativity, something that can never be replaced. Real AI comes out every other Tuesday as part of a paid subscription to The Ankler, so please join me by subscribing at theankler.com today.
TaxAct knows small business owners can sometimes use a little help with their taxes. That's why TaxAct has Expert Assist, a team of live tax experts ready to answer any questions you may have. Think of them as your own personal sidekick. Not like one of those funny talking animal sidekicks, more like the super smart nerding out on tax code and business casual attire sidekick, but just as helpful and lovable. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Okay, welcome back to the Ankler podcast. So, Richard, your column this week about Liberty Chairman John Malone and WBD CEO David Zaslav, popular figure in town these days. Malone had said, now I think to Craig Moffett, Wall Street analyst, that WBD's balance sheet is, quote, bulletproof because of its deep-pocketed backers like himself. He called it investment grade and said that WBD is not going to run out of cash anytime soon. So they don't have to do anything, this is a quote, while they sit and watch this consolidation in the industry move forward. Moffett then wrote that nobody should rush to judgment about WBD, which, WBD has not exactly been a popular company in the sense of having a hopeful looking trajectory in the short term here, Richard.
Well, what I wrote about is, all the sturm and drang about David Zaslav. Whenever you read all this about the CEOs, and we here in the media are wringing our hands, saying this can't go on, this must end. The things that preoccupy us are not the things that preoccupy the people who write the checks in the corporate world.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's a very different thing, and all this stuff about David Zaslav sitting next to Elon Musk at a tennis game or whatever, probably this is like a little blip in the sky for John Malone. Like he's not even aware of it. But the debt of Warner Brothers of Warner Discovery is a very real thing that he's very aware of.
Yeah, that's nothing to sneeze at.
But David Zaslav has said from day one that this is his priority, lowering the debt. And any conversation you have with the folks there, they talk about bringing down the debt. They're obsessed with the debt. And so obviously, who wants to be in debt? But the important thing about getting the balance sheet in order, John Malone kind of hinted at what that's about there when he said, sit back and watch the consolidation occur, which implies the wave of consolidation hopefully rolling towards them and having the balance sheet in a good place so they can be a ultimate beneficiary of that is how I read what he was saying, which is to say, keep the fiscal house in order no matter what you do. Nothing else matters because we're going to be part of a transaction here.
David, was that your takeaway?
John Malone has spent 50 years in the business just doing financial engineering. Basically, he buys stuff, he sells stuff, he repackages it over and over and over. And this is what he does. And so, I don't think he can say, the library or whatever. I don't think he cares one whit about whatever relative quality there is at WBD in terms of, its actual output. It is all just numbers on a spreadsheet. And and his whole history is basically loading up with debt to grow and expand and, work towards free cash flow, which is very much, basically everything that Zaslav is doing. And I don't know, the guy's 83 years old, isn't it kind of enough already? And, not that I expect Craig Moffett or any Wall Street analyst to, sort of hold power to account. But seriously, this is all nonsense. I mean, can't he just go back he's 83 years old. I mean, I know he's still whatever, but can he go back to his competition with Bill Gates to see who the country's largest private landowner can be? I mean, just get a hobby. Stop toying with everyone just, for your own, sort of financial amusement.
David, I love how over it you always are. You're just like, he doesn't care, clearly.
But even from a financial engineering level, I don't think anyone involved was expecting the stock would be at a 7 right now. That doesn't help. By the way,
I'll say that this is a deep cut, but when you said that balance sheet is bulletproof. Do you remember 5 years ago when Elon Musk, speaking of Musk, introduced the Cybertruck? And he's like, this thing is impenetrable. And he took a steel ball and he threw it and then immediately smashed, left a huge dent in the truck. That's how I feel about WBD's balance sheet and its level of bulletproof nature or whatever. But okay, again, I just find it all so ridiculous. Malone is the vaunted cable cowboy. I looked it up. He grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. I mean, I know, cattle country in New Haven. Whatever. All these guys are full of it. I'm sorry. I mean, he worked at Bell Labs. He is like a scientist. I mean, yeah, he built a cable business and satellite business 50 years ago. Great. Go away again. I'm sorry.
We got a lot of cowfolk out here in the media fields. So
yeah, what is that? Is it just some myth of the frontier because you're in California? I mean, it's kind of embarrassing.
We're
I
wild.
don't even really
men.
think of California as being sort of like frontier vibe. Like, it's
Yeah,
more
not
like a Montana
I mean, I
thing.
understand. But yeah, I get it.
Implies a spirit of adventure. We're not just one of those suits. We're out there.
All right. Frontier makes
Trading.
me think of Oregon Trail and dying of
Yeah.
dysentery, but okay.
Yeah, but instead of trading cattle, we're just,
Yeah, we're out here.
financing the buying and selling and rebuying of, MGM and AT&T and whatever over and over and over. Great stuff.
Well, on that note, let's move on to our final topic of the day, folks, which is Disney's password sharing crackdown on Disney Plus. Now, are you guys Disney Plus subscribers?
Yes.
You have children, so I assume you
Yeah.
both are.
I'm going to go ahead on the podcast and reveal that I'm just
Don't
waiting.
own a TV.
No. Yes, of course, on TV. I'm just waiting for the notice that I have been ensnared in the Disney password crackdown because
Who are you sharing
Yes.
with, David? Who? Reveal your illicit activity.
A friend of the family came to visit a reasonable amount of time ago, let's say 2 years ago. And there was some movie that she wanted to watch with my daughter, who is now 13. And so basically, set up the app, put in her password, and basically it's sort of been there ever since. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
So the entirety of your daughter's pre-adolescence has been spent using
Hey, I'm paying for
a
Hulu ad
stolen
tier.
password.
I'm paying for Hulu ad tier. I'm just going to keep saying that again. But so they're getting some money out of me. But I am not paying for Disney Plus. But I sense that the day is coming where, yes, the access to the Doctor Who catalog and whatever will probably mean I have to part with the $10 a month or whatever it is. So fine. But I guess my question,
someone at Disney here is like taking down notes.
Oh yeah,
looking
please
for
go
an
ahead.
IP
Come get me.
address.
Like
in
I'm
New
just
York.
waiting. Absolutely. I figured this would be the chance to just accelerate the process without question. So I guess what's weird to me is like, sure, I mean, do it. I accept that. But so Netflix added, at least you can't, who's to say how many people of its subscriber additions are expressly attributed to the crackdown. But in the 2 years since the crackdown began, Netflix has added about 55 million subscribers. So, okay.
One of them
great.
is my
I didn't-
mother, who I just had
there
to
you go.
sign up for this month when I think she had still accidentally been logged on and was like, why can't I get Netflix? And it's like, well, Mom, I guess it's time for you to get your own account.
But I guess we're moving away from people caring about how many subs. So, I mean, it really is about
So what does it
Can they get
really
people to-
matter?
yeah, well, no, it matters. I'm not trying to get out of, I'm not trying to get out of my own sort of lightly illegal
David's
activity.
like, what's one shared account, guys?
In the grand scheme of things.
What it matters is that, sure they should crack down password sharing, whatever. But the big picture is these services are all getting smaller with less shows, harder to use, and with more ads, less fun to use. So it's a dramatic worsening of this great streaming miracle happening before us.
Yeah, you're definitely paying more and getting less. Although Disney, I think Disney Plus in particular was like, well, we're going to give you one show a quarter and you're going to like it. And so enjoy that back catalog.
Netflix does what, one show a week or something? I mean, in
Oh,
terms of
Netflix
like
is
which
more than that.
catalog actually still grows its originals. I
New
mean,
comedy special every Tuesday, new docuseries every Wednesday.
that's still the best bang for your
it's
buck, honestly.
Movie. Yeah, you're getting 4 or 5 original piece of content a week, I think.
For $7 a month because I'm cheap and do the ad tier.
Oh, there you go. So, well, I'm paying full freight for. So, whatever that is, $17-18. So, so Netflix we're good. Me and Netflix they can't.
Don't
They
come
can't
for
compete.
him, Netflix.
Yeah, that's right. You got the wrong guy if you got any trouble with me. So, I mean, I guess, but yeah, I mean, again, do you think that they want people to go to the ad tier or do they want people to pay full freight or do they not? do you think they don't care? They just want.
I think they just want well, if you look at the Netflix thing, for example, right? It's like we had the regular whatever ad-free tier until they introduced the ad tier, and then we decided to downgrade to save money. And then after that, they booted my mom off the account, so we had to pay another $7 a month separately for her. So that still winds up being $14 a month compared to, gosh, what were we paying before? Like $16 a month. So, I don't know that they actually wound up making any extra money off of us, less so actually per month. But at least we're all honest and accounted for now. Right. And unless they were to do it with ad revenue, which is an unspecified part of the equation.
Yeah. So, hey, whatever. I wish them all the best. I mean, it does seem like their, their rollout, as Richard had the pop up in his newsletter today, and and just reading like their very corporate post about it that was sort of hard to even figure out like what I could or couldn't do. It seems like Disney is not necessarily taking a light hand in beginning this process.
No, but it's definitely marking the end of the getting. I hope you got in when the getting was good era of streaming, when Disney Plus was like, what was it, like $3-4 a month, and you could share.
It's like riding Uber in 2014.
Those days are over.
Yeah. It's like, wow, I got across in all of LA for $8. Like, this is amazing. Like, yeah, no more. So, oh well.
I recently took a flight that cost $62, and the Uber to the airport cost $66. So yes, we're in that era of streaming.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
All right, folks. Well, thank you guys, as always, for listening. I'd be curious how many of our listeners today are now going to have to get their own Disney Plus accounts. And, of course, if any of you have been impacted by the recent cuts and layoffs and want to share your experience, you can always reach out to us. I'm at Elaine@theankler.com. And, of course, as always, go to theankler.com to sign up for all of our newsletters and podcasts. Just enter your email address on the site there, and you're good to go. And, of course, if you have any mail for us, we're at podcasts@theankler.com. Not an email address I personally check, so I'm going to check in on that shortly. And follow us all at The Ankler on social media.
There is a human and not AI who checks.
Yes,
who
it
checks
will
that
be a
inbox,
human.
I promise.
Yeah, you'll know it's human because we forget about it and we only check this mailbox every like 6 weeks. All right, then. So, David, Richard, great to see you as always. And listeners, we will chat with you next week.